Did you suffer a catastrophic injury in your Virginia car accident case and you're worried about your statute of limitations running out and you're not sure what to do? Watch this video and we'll tell you what we think. Hey folks, James Abrenio coming to you from Abrenio Law, your Northern Virginia personal injury and criminal defense law firm. In this video, let's talk about situations where you've suffered a catastrophic injury, your statute of limitations is running, and you're not sure what's going to happen. Are you going to lose the ability to make that claim? Are you going to lose the ability to be fully compensated for your injuries? At Abrenio Law, unfortunately, we end up helping out people with pretty serious injuries. That means broken bones, surgeries, traumatic brain injuries. In some of these cases, these injuries persist beyond the 2-year statute of limitations. And I'll tell you, in Virginia, there's typically 2-year statute of limitations for personal injury cases. In some instances, it can be shorter. We've done videos on what the statute of limitations is, so make sure to check out our website for that. But let's assume it's 2 years, and let's assume you're coming up on that statute of limitations. At Abrenio Law, what we will typically do when we're approaching a statute of limitations, we will be making sure that we're filing a lawsuit far in advance of that statute of limitations to make sure that we preserve that claim. Because if you blow your statute of limitations, you don't not only get not compensated for the future and persistent injuries that you're suffering, you also don't get compensated for the past injuries. You lose your claim, you lose your right to make the claim here in Virginia. So typically speaking, once we get around the 6-month mark, we're already looking and preparing the lawsuit to avoid blowing the statute of limitations. The reason being, we want to make sure that we sue the proper party, we've made the proper claims, and if something needs to be fixed, we have enough time to do that. Again, we treat people with persistent injuries, so it's not uncommon for us to be filing a lawsuit and the individual still be suffering from her injuries. So to be clear, assuming there's enough insurance coverage, you can seek compensation for persistent injuries, for permanent injuries, by filing a lawsuit, and then you can seek that in the litigation. So oftentimes when you file a lawsuit, that will preserve that claim. Now, from a procedural standpoint, under Virginia law, you typically have a year upon filing a lawsuit to serve it. But I will tell you, most jurisdictions want you to serve it well beyond that year, well before that year, and they don't like you waiting. So Fairfax, for instance, is one of those jurisdictions. But even once you serve a lawsuit, so you officially trigger a lawsuit by giving it appropriately to the defendant, you're usually not going to get a trial date for a year and a half, in some jurisdictions, even 2 years. So after you've filed a lawsuit, you still have time to keep recovering from your injuries. Sometimes by the time you get to trial or the months before when you're required to file certain documents, the client has now had enough time to create some breathing room, and then they've recovered by the time they get to that point. Some people don't, okay? Some people have permanent injuries, and you can still make a claim for those permanent injuries so long as you have a medical expert that's willing to testify to a reasonable degree of medical probability within their field that you have permanent injury, and you can seek compensation for that. So you can preserve those permanent claims. Now, another aspect is you do have what we call a non-suit in Virginia. That's the ability to file a voluntary dismissal of your case, and then you have an additional 6 months to refile, assuming conditions are met. And then you can bring it back, and then you extend it another year and a half, because you're not getting a trial date until after refiling, after reserving and getting a trial date. So there are mechanisms under Virginia law to extend that statute of limitations even further. But even if you come up with a situation where you're just not going to recover, let's say you've got a permanent brain injury, let's say you've suffered a fracture to the wrist and you've lost permanent mobility in it, and you have permanent immobility in it, so long as you've got medical experts to support that claim, you can make that claim. Now, just because you preserve the claim doesn't mean you're automatically going to be compensated for it. I can tell you, the more devastating your injuries, the more likely the insurance companies are to try to contest those claims. So just be aware that just because you're claiming it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get the money. The other thing to think about is limitations of insurance. Now, under Virginia law, currently the minimum requirements are 25,000. Frankly, that may have actually increased to 50,000 recently. But if you've got a devastating permanent injury, that amount of money is going to be minimal. So let's say that person has minimal in coverages. And you've got minimal insurance amounts to go after, well, you can still pursue money against them personally. But I will tell you, usually when people have limited insurance, they usually have limited assets, because usually people with a lot of money, the first thing they do is buy a bunch of insurance to protect those assets. So you also have to be talking with your attorney about what coverage there are, because there could be limitations there that may make you change your mind about the ability and what you may be compensated for, and your ability to get compensated. The other thing I will say is, if you're telling me, or if you're watching this video and you've got a permanent injury, you've got a complicated injury that's persisting to where you're worried about the statute of limitations, you need an attorney. It's those kinds of claims that if you don't have an attorney, the insurance company is going to take advantage of you because you don't know how to litigate your own case. I'm not saying you're not smart. You may be smarter than me, but unless you're a personal injury attorney, there's a lot of traps set up for you to not be able to get the coverage that you deserve. So hopefully this information, while it's really just a flag issues for you, hopefully this information is useful. Hopefully it starts having you ask important questions. If you have other questions, you can reach out. Phone number 703-570-4180. You can also check out our website, www.Abrenio.law, where we shot a bunch of videos, written a bunch of articles about common questions in Virginia car accident cases. So wish you the best. If you need to reach out, we look forward to talking to you. But until then, stay safe. Thanks. Bye.